Good evening, lovely spirits. It's the wise servant here, Mr. Solace. I greet in the sign of the rising sun, peace and wisdom. Now this evening I want to do this video for you guys called The Ark of the Covenant. And what I want to do is explain exactly what the Ark of the Covenant is, as well as where it is. And this is very important. Now, in order for you guys to fully understand this, I need to bring you back to the beginnings, to Noah's Ark. Because Noah's Ark and the Ark of the Covenant, they are one thing. And it's a very deep thing most people do not understand. You can say Noah's Ark becomes the Ark of the Covenant. And I'm going to explain in depth. So like I said, I want to take you guys back to the beginning. So we'll start at, in the beginning, there was the Spirit of God. From then, we'll go to Adam and Eve, and I'll explain what that is. Then we'll go to the giants, Genesis 6:6. Then we'll go to Noah's Ark. Then we'll go to the Tower of Babel, Jacob, children of Israel, Moses parting the Red Sea, and then the Ark of the Covenant. Therefore, you guys can fully grasp what the Ark of the Covenant is and what this is all saying. Now, the first thing I want to say is this. I am not a Christian myself, but that doesn't mean that my conscience cannot be raised to an all-knowing understanding. So what I'm saying is, we all have the ability to raise our conscience to an all-knowing state of understanding. Meaning, whether you're a follower of something or not, you'll still understand it. It'll still be familiar. Now, if you have your own understanding of life, it doesn't matter what tongue you hear it in or what way someone expresses it, but you will understand it. And so this is what I mean by an all-knowing understanding, so to say. Now, I want to start, but in order for you guys to grasp, you need to understand the narration of the Holy Bible. The point. And so we know. Well, we don't know. But the Bible is written in 3 parts. Old Testament, New Testament, Revelations. And this is conception, birth, and then death. Because it is explaining physical life. This is what the Bible is explaining. Physical life. No matter how far you date it back. So physical life has a coming into being. And so all who is physical, I'm sure they wonder, how did this all happen? And where's this going? And so that's what it's explaining. Now, all of this is real physical life, and this is what I'm going to explain to you guys, as well as show you. Now, as I said, you need a perspective when reading the book, so it's written in those 3 parts. Now, the narration of the book is this. You have one spirit, because it's speaking of physical life coming into existence. So all you need is one physical being to explain. And so you have one spirit, its fall and rise to redemption through the Christ. The Christ being the body. So I'll explain that as I go through the video, but Jesus is just the name of the body. So as I said, the Bible is written in 3 parts. conception, birth, death. And so the New Testament, which is the birth, and so all bodies have names. And so they gave it a name. But that body is known as the Christ, the egg cell. The sperm is the spirit, the egg is the body. And so the egg cell, the feminine energies, was the Christ, the Redeemer. And so I'll explain all that as well, but let's start at the beginnings. So like I said, we all know there was one spirit in the beginning who raised himself above the rest. This was Lucifer. And so we know what happened to him. He was cast away into the bottomless deep. And so then the Bible starts. In the beginning, the Spirit of God was hovering over the face of the waters in the bottomless deep. And so that God in the beginning of the Bible that shaped and formed and created the world is that fallen spirit, Lucifer. And so it's a deep thing many do not know. And it's because the teachings was altered. So in ancient times, Kemetic, Sumerian, where this came from, it was broken down the right way. In our times, it has been Antichrist. So I'll explain. But in the beginning, you had the Spirit of God hovering over the face of the waters. This is to say, in the beginning, the sperm cell was hovering in the womb, the dark bottomless deep. Now, if you're confused when a man ejaculates, these are brain cells falling down his spine out of the penis area. And so brain cells are falling, becoming sperm cells, going into the womb. And so in the beginning, the Spirit of God, not God himself, but the Spirit of, just like the sperm cell is not you, but it is of. And so this is how all comes into physical being. And so it's a deep thing you have to grasp, no matter how far back you go. So this is the way into the physical. And so you have to grasp, in the beginning, the sperm cell was hovering in the waters. And then got the egg cell. This is let there be light. And so I want you guys to grasp, when a sperm cell gets an egg cell, it's not the egg cell that's being got, but it is the nucleus which is within the egg cell. So it's like I said, the egg is the body. And so all bodies are worlds. Now, in its egg cell state, you have the egg cell, and then you have a nucleus within inside. That nucleus, you can say, is spirit that's been subjected to death. Because every 28 days, spirits are pushed out of bloody hell into the great, nothing. And so it's a deep thing. This is your egg cell. So I just want to give you a perspective. You got an egg cell, and then you have what's inside of it that's important. So this is just like the world for what's in it. And this is why this egg cell in the past was known as the Christ. Because it helps redeem the two fallen spirits. So this is the nucleus within the egg cell and the nucleus of the sperm cell. And so it is these two things that matter. This is just the body or the world that this cell is in. Now this is important because all bodies are worlds. So we live in the world, meaning it was in this state in its early beginnings. And so this is what the Bible is explaining. And so the cells within all bodies, being as though all bodies are worlds, the cells would be us. And so it is speaking of our ancestors that were in this world, our body, in its embryo state. And now, so it's been born out. And so we are the cells in the body after now. And so it's a deep thing I want y'all to grasp. But when this masculine spirit communes with this feminine spirit, so this is Lilith, you can say, fallen angel, and Lucifer. And so when they become one, now you have two spirits in one body. And so this is all of us, you know, the twin flames thing, those spiraling serpents. Sometimes you see it in medical history, spiraling serpents going up, you know, the wings. So that's what this is, that twin flames thing. Now, when this happens, these two merge, you get a zygote, which is a single cell organism. So this is the egg with its nucleus, and this is it when the sperm fuses with it. So now you have one cell inside the egg cell, but that cell is two. So it's no different than, you know, man and woman coming together. And then from there you have, you know, a woman gives birth. And so this is how you get, you know, the cells multiplying. It's like a pregnancy. This feminine deity in the egg cell gets pregnant by this masculine one. And then it becomes a zygote. So y'all have to understand science a little better. That becomes a zygote. You can say a pregnant woman. So this is Eve. Once they fuse, you get the zygote. Then after that, you get the duplication, or the dividing of the cells within the egg cell. And so this becomes 2, then 4, then 6. But when it becomes 2, this is Adam and Eve. Now you have to grasp, when those 2 cells first, you know, divide and then you get the 2, those 2 go to the median layer of that egg cell. Now, that egg cell fills up with cells until it's too many. It's crowded in there. But as that's happening, you're getting layers made within the egg cell. So all of this starts at the top. And then, you know, Adam and Eve comes down. And then they begin to populate that bottom area. And then, you know, this is where you get the story in the Bible. The angels from heaven saw the daughters of earth. It's speaking of this embryo state of the world, our body. And so they looked down and seen the daughters of earth. It's talking about that. And so this is that ectoblast stage. And so the ectoblast cells come down to that median layer. And then from there, you know, they kind of reproduce. And so this is your heaven, earth. Then when they die, so the bottom begins to populate. Now you got 3 levels of cells within the egg cell. But, so this is it crowded. And you got 3 levels. This happens, blastocyst period. So after it becomes too populated within the egg cell, the cells kind of break up inside the egg cell, and then you get the space with the cells all around it, and then you get a bunch of cells right there, clumped up. Now what's important about this bunch of cells clumped up, because this is your Noah's Ark. Very deep thing I want you guys to grasp. That's your Noah's Ark. Because it is those cells that plant themselves on the uterus wall. And then the outer cells become the placenta. Then the outer cells that's beneath those outer cells become the amniotic sac. And then the inner cells float around in the amniotic sac waters. And so that's your Ark of Noah. That. Why? because that is what begins to grow into the embryo. And so all those other cells that were all these cells, they don't make it. Only the few in the core, after these become the placenta, the amniotic sac, then the few in the core, they become what is known as the embryoblast. And that's what starts to develop into shape and form, meaning into body. The rest of the cells, so they're flooded out, so to say, in the amniotic sac fluid, meaning they become the placenta and the amniotic sac. And so they're a wrap for. It's a deep thing you have to grasp. Now, that's your Noah's Ark. Now, as the body begins to grow, so the skin, as well as the gut, I believe, begins to suck up the amniotic sac fluid. And then so there's more body than fluid. And so, you know, that's when the waters recede. But you have to grasp, that's what this is speaking of. Then from there you have the Tower of Babel. So now you still have the egg cell in its egg cell stage, but now it's about to begin to start taking shape and form. And so what happens in the egg cell, you have what is known as a primitive groove. And you have an upper and lower membrane. So before it begins to shape and take form, let's say you get a dot on the top and a dot on the bottom. The dot on the top, all above it will become, you know, the brain and the things. And all below that dot, you know, will become, you know, the legs and all of that. And that dot will represent, you can say, where the pubic area would be. And so in between those two dots, you get a primitive groove. Now I want you to grasp the cells from the middle, because I told you guys this, the embryo is 3-layered, lamina. And so now the cells from the middle begin to build up what is known as the notochord, which becomes the spine. And they build it up to that upper membrane, that upper dot, which is, you know, you can say the mouth, where the mouth will form. Now, as they build that up, that's when they begin to disperse. They can't go past that point. And so this is, you know, the Tower of Babel story, where they built the tower up to heaven and then they were dispersed. So this is what's literally happening after conception. And so now these cells are building up this body, or what we call this body, from the egg cell state. And so now everything's in its primitive state. Even the brain, because the brain starts taking shape and form at 4 weeks. 4 to 8 weeks. But it's not raised up to the head part until there is one. And so it's a deep thing. Now, when you get to Jacob and the children of Israel, this is what it's speaking of. Like I said, everything is being formed in that primitive embryo state. But once the body begins to take shape and form, now everything has to be formed in its place. And so the whole story is really talking about that. Meaning, that thalamus, which is the throne of God, you can say these are those two spirits from the beginning. And this is what becomes that thalamus, or that throne seat, the Lamb of God. And so, in its primitive state, when it's in the embryo, it begins to take shape and form. That has to be brought up. And so, this is what it's speaking of in the Bible, with the children of Israel are having all their wars and fights trying to get to Jerusalem to bring the ark. But I skipped a little bit. Now, Jacob would basically be the pineal gland. This is why it says he named the place Penuel, because there he wrestled the Lord. So this is speaking of the pineal gland. You can say Jacob is the forming of the pineal. And then after that, you start to get the shaping and forming of the brain. This is the neural tube beginning to stretch out. And so now the head starts to form. And you know, the rest looks squiggly and wiggly and weird. And so you can say Jacob is the pineal gland. And he wrestled with the Lord, making a place for himself where the brain forms. So now this place is for his children, the cells of the brain. And then, you know, you have the children of Israel now. The brain is forming. And so, you know, they're trying to get, it's explaining, you know, the brain forming, then the diencephalon, then that thalamus, which is that throne of God, or that spirit of God from the beginning, and the one in the egg cell, the two nucleus. And so you have to grasp, it's explaining that in the way our science or technology does not kind of catch what's happening in conception. But now, when you get to the children of Israel, you know, this is the cerebral or the cerebrum area beginning to form, the four lobes of it and all of that, the cranium. This is before you get two halves of the brain and the four lobes. This is just when you get the cranium formation, so to say. Then from there you get Moses parting the Red Sea. Let me see if I have any visuals for you guys. No, I don't. But Moses parting the Red Sea is when that cranium now gets the longitudinal fissure. This is where the two halves of the brain separate. And then you have what is known as the corpus callosum. So this is the two halves of the brain separating. And this corpus callosum is the landmass that the cells cross back and forth through. But in its primitive state, you know, Moses parted it. This is where the brain gets that part in it. And so the corpus callosum is formed. The cells pass across. So this is what that's speaking of. Now, why they're being chased is because as all of these parts of the body is being formed, so that thalamus, or that Ark of the Covenant, is being brought up. So now after Moses parts the Red Sea, this is, you know, the brain being parted. You get in the gyri. That's the, you can say the islands of the brain, the little creases all over it. You get the four lobes, so to say. Then after that, the Ark of the Covenant is built by Moses. And so this is explaining now the diencephalon area. So you got the cerebrum, the four lobes, and now the diencephalon. And so it's speaking of all of that coming into form. Now that diencephalon area is important because that's where the thalamus is housed or locked down at. Let's see if I have any images. This is the diencephalon. And so this would be one half of the thalamus, and this would be the other half of the thalamus. And you know, this would be the third ventricle of these ventricles. And this is known as the diencephalon area. And so this is the Ark of the Covenant that's locking down or housing that thalamus, which is that gray matter. Those two nucleus from the beginning now developed. You can say, you know, you in the spirit now, locked down in that diencephalon are this. And so this is that Ark of the Covenant that is being spoken of. An ark is not a boat. You know that. We assume the Ark of Noah was a boat because it was floating in the waters. But that's only because we didn't understand science in the coming into beings after conception. And so you have to grasp, the ark never meant a boat. And so the Ark of the Covenant should have been the first sign of that. If you got Noah's Ark in the Ark of the Covenant, why one's a boat and the other ain't? Because we don't call boats arks, and no one ever did. And so that's your first clue to grasp, you know. Now, if you look up ark by definition, it basically just, you know, the circumference of a circle or a part of a circle. And so this is the diencephalon of your brain that locks down that thalamus. And so this would be, I'm sorry, the images are not that dark, but this would be it from a side view, the Ark of the Covenant that houses what? The 10 Commandments of God. What are the 10 Commandments of God? The Word of God, right? Like in the beginning was the Word, the Spirit of God. That's what it means. That gray matter, that thalamus, the Spirit from the beginning. You know, you, me, whoever came in a physical being. But that is that Word. And so this is the ark, meaning your diencephalon, those ventricles, and they lock down that gray matter, so to say. And so it's a deep thing you have to grasp, the children of Israel being, you know, the brain cells that's all around this thing. And so King Solomon in Jerusalem, this would be, you know, that area, you know, where the pineal gland and all of that is, that would be Solomon Square. Because now all of that's raised up. So it's no longer, you know, associated with Jacob in his time, which would be still embryonic state. So you have to grasp, the Garden of Eden is the same as the holy city of Jerusalem. It's just a matter of embryonic state to birth. This being, you know, that body taking shape and form. And so the thalamus, the brain, all these things, shaped and formed from 8 weeks. But it's still in its primitive state. You can look this up. And so as the body's shaping and forming, so this is dragging along, going to its place, or becoming what it is from its primordial soup state. And so as this is happening, they're explaining it because the cells are literally doing this, meaning the cells are building up that natal core thing, or as we view it, stacking themselves up to become it. Cells are coming together to become what we view as the cerebrum. So they're explaining that these little micro entities coming together, building up what we know as this body, and then taking that spirit from the beginning, those two twin flames, and kind of locking them down in the ark. This is why, you know, they get all the magical powers that they had. It's to explain that's the waters of life, the living waters, basically you in the spirit. And so when a man ejaculates, it's that being pushed out down those ventricles. The third ventricle, the fourth ventricle, the third ventricle, then that cavity space, I forgot what it's called. That would be Egypt. And then from there you get the fourth ventricle, and then it goes all the way down to the sacrum. And out the sacral hiatus. So that's a whole nother lesson I'll break down to you guys. The sacral hiatus. At the tail end of the spine, you have this. And I'll break that down in another video. You have the same thing. That Ark of the Covenant. And so you have two brains truly. One at the spine, one up above. Many don't realize this. But as I was explaining, you know, the Ark of the Covenant being from its primordial state, being brought up as the body grows, I want to give you a Bible verse to help you grasp. In Genesis 49:10 it says, "The scepter will not depart Judah till Shelah comes." That's what it's speaking of. The Ark of the Covenant, so to say, or, you know, the Spirit of God, will not depart Judah until that neural tool begins to take shape and form. The body grows. And it is placed in, you know, the holy city of Jerusalem, which is that throne seat area. And so it's a deep thing you have to grasp. That's where the Lord is sacrificed, so to say. The Lord being you. And the Christ being the body, the egg cell, that kind of gives you a shot at redemption. Because if there was no egg cell there, then we'd all be fucked. And so this is the inside of your brain. This is a real image, micro x-ray image. So it's a deep thing I want you guys to grasp. That's the Ark of the Covenant. Now around 28 weeks the thalamus forms above in the brain. But like I said, it's already what it is at 8 weeks, but the brain, the heart, everything is just in one place because it's still in ovum shape. So it's a deep thing you guys have to grasp, you know. The ark being built to carry the 10 commandments, word of God. 10 commandments is words of God, so to say. And so that's what it's speaking. Sound being the creator, or what separates from silence, which would be the all, you know, that God. And so the 2 stone tablets represent the 2 spirits from the beginning, the one in the feminine and the masculine. And so it's a deep thing, like I said, when little girls go through puberty, so their amygdala shrinks. 1/3 of their gray matter, meaning their brain cells, pruned away or falls away. And from there they get their period. It's a very deep thing. And so that's how this happens. That's how this spirit ends up in hell, you can say. Fallen in hell. But this egg cell, this what becomes the body, this is its redeemer or its shot. And so, you know, this feminine spirit, Lilith, draws in Lucifer from the masculine. And so, you know, he falls down, pushed out into the womb, gets his way inside here to her. And so now this Christ, our egg cell, our body, can now redeem these 2 fallen, because now they are one body. 2 spirits, masculine and feminine. This is why you're dual in your nature, because you truly are in one body. And so it's a deep thing you guys have to grasp. That's why it says, just as Adam was removed from paradise, paradise was removed from earth. Because the egg cell is trilaminar, 3-layered. And so as the cells migrate from above to below, creating that 2nd level, so that's their fall. And so just as Adam was removed from paradise, so it was removed from him too. Meaning all you had was paradise until they descended down. And so in the cells descending down to that median layer, then that 3rd layer. So this is how you get, you know, this is how you get heaven, earth, and hell, so to say. You know, spirits falling, being born, and then death. So it's a very deep thing. You know, you can say this is part 1. I'm going to come back and break down Solomon and the rest of the Old Testament. Then I'll break down the New Testament. And then Revelations. But for now, let this sink in. I also have a book coming out where I have images to go with it all so that you can truly grasp. Hopefully this made sense for you guys. If not, you can email me for any questions. Peace and wisdom.